Hi everyone. To keep you updated, Grishuk and Gelfand remain inseparable in the Candidates Tournament final after 4 games and 4 draws. There's been some interesting play from both sides, but nothing I thought was worthy of reporting. This time I figured we'd take a look at a nice game that was played at the Capablanca Memorial last week. It was played between the elite Cuban Grandmaster Lazaro Bruzon, rated 2693, and Ukrainian Vasily Ivanchuk, rated 2776, and one of the greatest living players never to become world champion, a true genius. Bruzon had white and opened with e4, to which Ivanchuk answered c6, the super solid Caro-Kann defense. Play continued with the book line d4, d5, knight c3, d takes e4, knight takes e4, and bishop f5, the classical or Capablanca variation, quite appropriately given the tournament. Play continued with the main line knight g3, bishop g6, h4, threatening h5, so h6, knight f3, and now e6 from Ivanchuk, which isn't the most popular move. Knight d7 is normal, but in this game he decided to delay that move. This is unorthodox because it allows knight e5, which scores well for white. However, Bruzon, perhaps weary of Ivanchuk's reputation, decided to play instead h5, after which black has better chances, statistically. However, there are still some chances for transposition into the other lines. After bishop h7 comes bishop d3 and bishop takes d3, which loses 3 tempi, but theory has proved that this isn't an issue for black. After queen takes d3, we have reached one of the many opening positions that give the Caro-Kann its reputation as being one of the most solid defenses available to black. The pawn structure is very solid, with a firm grip on a central d5 square, and c5 push can be played at the correct moment to contest white's central control. In order to sharpen things up, white can elect to castle queenside, but even then the Caro-Kann is a tough nut to crack. Ivanchuk continued with knight f6, and Bruzon now played a slightly inferior move, knight e4, which Fritz didn't like. It makes sense to get the relatively inactive knight on g3 more involved and to challenge black's well-posted f6 knight in the process, but the engines give black a small edge after this move. Fritz preferred queen b3, attacking b7, where after queen b6, black is equal but not better, as in the game continuation. So knight e4, and now knight bd7, just bolstering the f6 knight and keeping the black position totally solid. Bruzon now went for bishop d2, intending to castle queenside in order to sharpen things up a little, which is a common strategy for white in the classical Caro-Kann. Considering there will be opposite sides castling and pawn storms on either wing, Ivanchuk didn't waste any time and played immediately a5, which applies a small bit of pressure immediately on the white king after castling. And now another nice move from Ivanchuk. One of the points of playing a5, the move before, is also to allow bishop b4, which is both provocative and dynamic. The idea, of course, is to open the a file for the rook and, for rook activity, but there's more to it than that. After bishop takes b4, a takes b4, Ivanchuk allows a check on d6 from the knight, which is a very attractive choice for white because it means black can't castle, and it was a daring decision from Ivanchuk, and incredibly, after king e7, the engines give a significant edge to black already, bordering on a pawn. The point is that the d6 knight is attacked by the king, and if it moves, then the a pawn is falling to the rook, so white is forced to play dynamically in suit, and did so with knight e5, which, in actual fact, is more or less forced to save the position. If a king takes d6, there's now knight takes f7 check, which is going to win the queen, and what's more, there's now the threat of a knight taking on f7 and winning the exchange, which black must deal with, and Ivanchuk did so calmly with rook f8, And after only 16 moves, white is faced with some difficult decisions. He now has to do something about defending his d6 knight from the king, as well as deal with the threat on the a2 pawn, and he is unable to neutralize both threats with one move. It's not common to be able to exploit the d6 hole in the Caro-Kann defense, but here white is apparently able to do so with knight ec4, and this showed some very deep calculation from Bruzon, but unfortunately for him there were some problems with this move. Best according to Fritz was knight d takes f7, rook takes f7, knight takes f7, king takes f7, with a nice edge to black, but not as much as in the game continuation. Ivanchuk played a great move at this stage. If you want to try and spot it, then stop the video now. Queen c7 is the move, which threatens b5 next, which is going to win the c4 knight. You know, because it'll have to either move or get taken, and if it moves, then the d6 knight is no longer defended and can be taken by the queen. And if black had tried to do that now, to win the d6 knight with the king, it allows white to draw quite incredibly. Let's have a look. If instead of queen c7, b5 at this stage, now how do you save your position with the white pieces? Again, if you want to try and spot the way to do it, then stop the video now. Knight f5 check is the only move to save the game. Black must accept the sacrifice. His only other option is king e8, but then knight c d6 is mate. So e takes f5, and now rook h e1 check is again a forcing move, as knight e4 is the only reasonable response. But now comes rook takes e4 check, where if black wants to stay in the game, he must play king f6. If instead f takes e4, white has a winning attack with queen takes e4, forcing knight e5 to avoid mate. But now queen takes e5 check, again forcing king d7, now queen d6 check, once more forcing king c8, queen takes c6 check, king b8, queen takes b5 check, and white's attack will win the game. So to avoid this, black declines the rook at move 20. After rook takes e4, he plays king f6. But now comes queen g3 from white, and there will be a perpetual check after b takes c4 with queen d6 check, king g5, and queen g3 check, etc. It was amazing foresight from Ivanchuk to foresee that b5 would not win him the game on the spot, as ostensibly it appeared to be winning a piece. Other possible moves, instead of queen c7 and the immediate b5, were rook takes a2. It's another option, but this is nowhere near as strong for black, despite winning the a pawn. Fritz appears to have come up with an improvement on Ivanchuk's play, but I'm not sure whether to trust it. Instead of rook takes a2 or queen c7, there was also queen b8, which again is threatening b5 and winning the d6 knight. And Fritz believes that the queen is better posted on b8, and some of the reasons why will become clear as the game progresses. But anyway, back to the game continuation for now. Ivanchuk played queen c7, which is a very nice and accurate move, as we'll see. And Bruzon followed up with rook he1, which is a logical move because it controls the semi-open file, eyes the black king, excuse me, and allows the threatened knights to escape tactically. After b5, which is what Ivanchuk played, because now Bruzon has knight e3, which is a very nice move that saves his pieces, but not his position. Now comes rook takes a2, and white is starting to get into serious trouble. The opening of the a file that we saw in the opening phases of the game will now prove a decisive strategical mistake from Bruzon. Playing instead king takes d6 is a tactical blunder. If you want to try and spot why, then again stop the video now. knight f5 check is the reason why, and it's a nice shot. Black has only two options. If king d5, then queen b3 is mate, so e takes f5 is the only other move. It's forced, but now comes queen g3 check, and black has the unpalatable choice of giving up either his king or his queen, after which, of course, the full point is going to white. This resource would not have been possible if black had played queen b8 instead of queen c7, as Fritz recommended, and is perhaps the sole reason why it was a superior move. However, in the queen b8 lines, black is no longer able to play the b5 push, as white can escape the worst of it tactically and thus deny the dangerous initiative that presumably Ivanchuk was seeking with his queen c7. Another blunder possible at this stage. King d6 is one. Another one, of course, is queen takes d6, but now thanks to the rook here on e1, knight f5 check, exploiting this pin, is going to win the queen. So, back to the game continuation. Rook takes a2 is what Ivanchuk played, and Bruzon countered with queen b3, which attacks the rook. And Ivanchuk played the best move, not rook a1 check, but rook a4, which protects the b4 pawn and prepares queen a7 with strong play down the a file. This was easily the best move, and Fritz gave it an exclamation mark in analysis. Taking on d6 instead loses tactically for the same reasons as before. Now black's position is winning, and all that remains is to go in for the kill. Bruzon was not willing to give up just yet, however, and chose the defense rook e2, but this was suboptimal. Fritz suggested instead knight df5 check, where after simply king d8, black remains easily winning. Now white now has to save his knight, and g3 is the best square, but black can now break through at leisure on the queen side, moving his king to safety and playing c5, for example. If instead of knight g3, after king d8, instead of knight g3, if knight g7, now knight e4, threatening rook a1, which is going to be mate, is winning for black. So rook e2 from Bruzon, and now queen a7 from Ivanchuk, which is one of several winning approaches for black. The threat is rook a1 check, followed up with queen takes d4 check after king d2 and a winning attack. And king takes d6 is now a genuine threat too. And it's incredible that this knight has been en prise for 7 moves, and black's attacking idea and initiative was based around winning it, yet it has remained untouched. However, its being a tactical liability has now resulted in providing Ivanchuk with a winning position. In order to defend the knight here, Bruzon played knight ef5 check, which is the best that white can hope for now. It exploits the pin again on the e-pawn and forces king d8, and after this move white could reasonably resign at this point, and Fritz gives an advantage of over 3 pawns to black, so the game is lost. Bruzon tried knight takes f7 check, which is one of a few desperate attempts available to white here. Another is knight takes g7, but this fails to rook a1 check, king d2, queen takes d4 check, which forces queen d3. Now rook takes d1, king takes d1, queen takes d3 check, c takes d3. And in this position, despite being a pawn down, the endgame is completely lost for white after king c7, attacking the knight, so knight e4, and now rook g8, and this knight is trapped. So knight takes f7 check, rook takes f7, this is now the game continuation, and queen takes e6 from Bruzon, and he sacrificed a knight, and he has a pawn for it, and apparently some initiative because the rook is attacked. But now came knight b6, which was another great move from Ivanchuk. It's defending the rook with the queen, and Fritz also gave this move an exclamation mark in an analysis, and as well as the rook being defended by the queen, the threat of knight c4 and rook a1 mate is so strong that white is obliged to play b3. But after this move, the 25th, Bruzon had had enough and threw in the towel, making the game another miniature for Ivanchuk's sizable collection. It's amazing how he can defeat grandmasters of Bruzon's caliber with such apparent ease, not only in 25 moves but with the black pieces leaving his king in the center and playing off all openings the Caro-Kann defense. The reason that Bruzon resigned here is that either rook a1 check or rook a2 is coming next with a winning attack in either continuation. Black can follow up with knight b d5, exploiting this, well, it's not actually an outpost, but there's a bind on c4 being played, so effectively this d5 square is going to be an outpost and very strong for the white knights. And after knight b5, knight c3 is also going to be threatened, winning the exchange. And as well as that, you know, there's several other factors in the position that just means white is completely lost here. And we can have a quick look, for example, after rook a2, and the threat here is again knight c4 and a devastating attack because the knight can't be taken or it's going to be mate in 3 with queen a3 check. And Fritz gives the best defense here as king d2, but now comes at knight b d5, threatening knight c3, and best play the rook d e1. Now black has rook d7, allowing queen takes c6. This is, you know, again the best that white can hope for, because now knight f4 threatens rook takes d4 check and a mating attack, which forces white to give up the exchange with rook e4. And there may even be stronger moves in the position instead of knight f4, such as rook a6. In any case, the tactics and threats of the position result in a forcing and winning line for black, regardless of how white chooses to defend. So it was a great game from Ivanchuk, who I believe is number 7 in the world at the moment. As I said at the start of this game, he's a truly fantastic player, incredibly creative and original. And if you don't know his games well, I suggest checking them out on chessgames.com. You'll be amazed. Okay, that's all for now anyway. Hopefully we'll see a decisive game in the Gelfand-Grishuk deadlock today. I'll be sure to make a video if we do, and I'll be watching live on ChessBomb anyway. So I hope to see you there. Thanks very much.